You're on the longship now. You've never heard silence like this. Not the silence of sleep, not the hush of snowfall. This is different. This is the silence before something breaks. You feel it in your chest. A dull rhythm. Not your heartbeat. Lower, slower, stronger. It's the oar beneath your hands churning cold black water into foam. You are one of 50, not a face among many, a limb on a beast. The longship moves like a creature alive. Its belly flexes with every pull. The timbers creak with the voice of their own whispering of death and the weight of what's coming. Your hands are raw. Where the wood bites, your thighs tremble. But you don't stop. No one does. The rhythm must hold because the ship must glide. Fog curls around you like a snake, thick and silver and wet. The prow of the ship cuts through it without a sound. You can just make out the carved dragon's head, its tongue outstretched, lips curled, eyes wide and angry, painted red. Your breath fogs in the air. You taste the brine on your lips. Cold wind finds the gaps in your cloak and the chills of sweat at your back. Somewhere behind you, someone mutters a prayer. You don't turn. There are no gods here but the wind, salt, and steel. The helmsman stands high at the stern, silent, alert. His cloak flaps like a torn sail in the wind. One hand grips the steering oar. The other rests on the hilt of a sword that comes from a place where no man leaves whole. You don't know his story. You don't ask. No one speaks now. Not even the younger men. Even they understand the longship demands silence. The oars dip again and again and again. 50 breaths, 50 pulls. You catch your reflection in the water. Moonlight, mist. Your face, painted. A strip of ash runs down your nose, under each eye and along your jaw. Your war paint from when you broke camp this morning. It still smells of smoke and pitch. You wonder if it will be washed away by the seawater or blood. A hand taps your shoulder. It's the old warrior with the scar across his eye. He nods ahead. You squint through the fog. There, a light, faint, flickering, orange against the gray. A shepherd's fire, burning faintly on a distant hill. Just below, a village rests, outlined in the light of the moon. The ship dips, then glides forward faster. The oars pull deeper now, urgent, hungry. This is the moment. You shift, reach down, feel the shaft of your axe beneath your bench, smooth, familiar, ready. Your heart picks up, not in fear, in focus. The village is close now. You can smell it. Smoke rolling over the thatched roofs and the musky scent of sheep from the hillside pasture. You can see rooftops in view. Somewhere inland, a dog begins to bark, and you begin to feel the weight of the moment. The silence that you already know turns to screams. They don't know. They never know. Something tightens in your chest, not hesitation, anticipation. You've been here before. You've seen what comes next. A whisper passes down the line, a signal. No more oars. You lift yours in perfect sync. 50 blades of pine lift from the water like wings. The ship glides forward on momentum alone, a ghost on the tide. The fog parts. The fog parts. Now the village is fully visible. Boats pulled up on shore, nets drying on stakes, a woman's cloak hung on a fence post. The dog sees you first. It barks once, twice. Then the first torch is lit. You don't wait for the order. You move. You grab your axe. Your feet splash into the shallows, cold as the grave, but you barely feel it. Your boots hit the sand, then the grass, then the shouting starts. Someone screams in the distance. A door bursts open. A man with a rake rushes forward, confused, trying to discern the reason for the commotion. Before he can draw the correct conclusion, the first sword silences him. More screams. The whole village is awake. Torches and bodies begin to appear from thresholds and emerge on footpaths. They are not the only ones moving. Shadows streak past you, your shield brothers, your shipmates. Silent is the fire until steel flashes. A man comes at you with a wood axe. You see his face, middle-aged, panic-twisted, lips trembling like he's trying to decide whether to shout or beg. You don't wait to find out which. You pivot low and quick, and as his axe swings over your shoulder, your shield slams into his ribs with a crunch. He staggers. You step in, and with the head of your axe, you split his skull like firewood on a chopping block. He falls limp to the ground. A girl screams behind you. Not a warrior, not a threat. You don't look back. That's not your task today. Not your burden. A cluster of villagers is forming. A few armed with tools, others with only rage and fear. They shout, and they try to form a line. They think this is a brawl. They think they'll defend the village. They've never met Viking shields, steel, or determination. They've never felt the weight of 50 men trained to move as one, who rode through fog and silence, and whose blades are sharpened not just on whetstones, but on purpose. They don't understand yet, but they will. A man bursts from the shadows of the stall to your right, shouting words you don't care to know. You move before he finishes the breath. Your shield slams into his gut. Your shoulder crashes through his chest. Your knees clip his thigh, and he folds like a collapsing tent. Another lunges wild, desperate, swinging a sickle with a wide arc. You duck beneath it and drive your axe into the side of his neck, deep and sure. You rip it free. He clutches the wound, blood spilling fast and hot between his fingers. He gurgles once, then crumples like a cut reed. You don't stop. You're not here for explanation. You're here for silver and reputation. You and your Viking brothers shift into a loose shield wall. The breath of blood still hot in your chest. You move not as men, but as a storm passing through the bones of the village. Shields raised, eyes fixed, blades still wet. You don't speak, you press. The villagers begin to break, not into battle, into begging. They see the truth now. This is no drunken brawl, no clan dispute. These are not neighbors with wounded pride. These are foreign wolves, iron-hearted, sword-wielding, with salt in their beards and death in their rhythm. One by one, the tools fall from the shaking hands, a pitchfork, a cleaver, a hammer. The women weep as they rush to the men. The men do not comfort them. They are already waiting for the gods or for the silence. The threat is neutralized, but nothing is calm. A voice cuts through the moment, not loud, but firm. A companion of the helmsman steps forward, broad shoulders, eyes like steel. He points to the longhouse. The villagers are ordered inside. One by one, they obey. No protests, no pleading, just the shuffling of obedience. Sheep with wolves at their backs. The door closes with a dull thud. A Viking is posted there, silent, heavy, unmoving. Then the real work begins. You move through the village like fire, licking up a dry field. No door is sacred, no threshold untouched. You shoulder into a hut, wood splinters. Inside the air is thick with smoke and fear. Your torchlight dances across the walls and the shelves. You're not looking for comfort. You're not looking for warmth. You're looking for the gleam. Anything that catches the fire's eye. A brooch, a cup, a silver ring tucked into the thatch. You find a spoon, dented but bright. You take it. A comb with a silver inlay. You take it. You find a small statue, some local god, long forgotten, but cast in shining metal. You smile, then you take it. The sound of searching fills the village. Wood cracking, beams falling, posts smashing, voices calling for others to come see what they had found. Size doesn't matter, only weight, only shine. It may be melted down into a coin, into a ring, into your future. And then, as quickly as it began, it's over. You return to the ship with full hands and quiet steps. No one celebrates, no one needs to. The village still smolders behind you. The sea is waiting. No one will catch you. No one ever does. You'll vanish into the mist like a myth, because that's what the longship does. It arrives before the sun and leaves before the scream fades. You cast one last glance at the village. No screams now, no fight left. You wonder if they'll tell stories, stories of dragons that came from the sea or a monster in painted mail. You wonder if a year from now, their children will still wake at night with the memory of your face. You do not wonder long. The ship is calling, and so is the next shore. You step into the surf, boots soaked through, silver clinking at your side. The longship waits, still and black as a serpent resting in the shallows. Its prow curves skyward, dragon-mouthed and snarling, wood soaked deep with brine and blood. The hull breathes beneath your hand as you grip the edge of the hull and haul yourself aboard. You take your place, hand to the oar. The order is given, and you row. The oar bites into the cold, salt water with a deep, rhythmic schlunk. Then again and again, 50 men, one beast. The longship glides, not like a boat, but like something alive. It does not fight the water, it reads it, anticipates it. Each stroke folds the sea behind you like pages turning in a book no monk could ever write. The wind catches in the square sail, striped red and black, and the mast creaks like a groaning god. You round a rocky bend. The village disappeared, smoke swallowed by distance and sea fog. The water turns rough as you leave the inlet. Out here in the open throat of the ocean, the longship bucks. Each wave lifts you like a hand and slams you down with bone-rattling weight. The salt stings your face. The spray hits like needles. Your stomach rolls. You swallow it down. Your palms are blistered. The skin breaks. You bleed on the wood, but no one stops. You pass the mouth of a river, black as ink, but you don't turn in. The helmsman points farther down the coast. Another settlement. A wealthier one, maybe. No one speaks, you only row. The ship beneath you was built with purpose, pines soaked in pitch, pegged and lashed, light enough to carry, sharp enough to pierce. Its bones flex but never break. It was made for speed, for silence, for sudden arrival. It is not just a vessel, it's a weapon. And you're sitting in its ribs, part of it now. You feel it, how it cuts the water, how it dances just above the surface like a ghost skimming a grave. Somewhere ahead, another fire waits to be lit, and somewhere behind, the stories begin. The longship was not born in a battlefield. It was born in the trees, in the stillness of the pine forest where the wind whispered in the branches and woodcutters sang low songs of the sea. Norse shipwrights laid down the bones of what would become the most feared vessel of the medieval world. It began with a single log, a trunk chosen not for size but for truth. The grain had to flow clean and straight, like a spine of a man who would never bow. From that, the keel was carved, the backbone of the beast. Around it, planks were fashioned in overlapping layers like the scales of a dragon. The Vikings called it clinker built, and the technique made the hull light, strong, and flexible. And then came the ribs, bent wood steamed into shape with care and curse words. The iron nails driven with precision, the woolen sail fitted and dyed, stitched from sheep shorn in spring and spun during the endless dark winter. Every part mattered, because the longship was not a decoration, it was destiny. The Norse had a problem. Their lands were rugged, fractured by fjords and rivers, stitched together by snow and stone. Travel by land was slow and dangerous, inefficient. But the sea was open. The sea was wild. The sea could carry you anywhere if you had the courage to tame it. Long before their enemies built castles, the Norse built ships. And not just any ships. Their longships, unlike anything the world had seen. Slender and strong, capable of gliding over rivers and roaring across oceans. They could sail in waters just 3 feet deep. They needed no port. They were the port. Other ships waited for calm harbors. The longship thrived in chaos. In 793, the monks of Lindisfarne heard a sound they could not name. It was not hoofbeats, not war horns, not the clatter of armored knights. It was oars, 50 of them, hitting the surf in rhythm, then boots on the wet sand. The longship had arrived. It would not be the last. By the end of the 9th century, Viking ships had touched the coasts of England, Ireland, France, Spain, Italy, Byzantium, the rivers of Rus, the shores of Iceland, Greenland, and Vinland, which we call North America. Think about that. Long before compasses, before navigational charts, before lighthouses or marine engines, the Vikings rode open seas in open-decked ships with no maps, just stars, wind, and memory. They had succeeded not because they had more men, not because they had better steel, but because they had something most armies didn't: mobility, surprise, and a ship that turned time and tide into weapons. The genius of the longship lay in its construction. It was fast, capable of 10 to 12 knots under sail, or more with oars. It was silent. Its flat bottom let it coast into harbors with barely a splash. It was flexible. If the wind failed, oars could carry it. If it ran aground, it could be carried over land. It didn't wait for battle. It brought battle. And the fear it cast was not accidental. Prows were carved into snarling beasts, dragons, serpents, wolves, not to honor gods, but to terrify men. Imagine being a monk in an Irish monastery. You've never seen a Viking. You don't even know what a Viking is. And suddenly, out of the mist comes a floating beast with teeth on its bow and fire in its belly. Before you can ring the bells, your world is ash. The ship was the warning and the punishment. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a message. But the longship wasn't just for raiding. It carried traders with furs, amber, walrus ivory, and slaves. It carried explorers searching for new lands and sagas to shape, envoys, messengers, and eventually kings. By the year 1000, Norse longships weren't just terrorizing coastlines. They were docking in Constantinople, sailing the rivers of Russia, and launching expeditions across the Atlantic. Even the famed Byzantine Varangian Guard, the emperor's elite personal soldiers, was filled with Northmen who had arrived by ship, offering steel for gold, their route to glory. Archaeological finds like the Gokstad ship and the Oseberg ship revealed astonishing craftsmanship. The Gokstad, found in Norway, could hold over 30 rowers and sail across the open sea. Its hull was so well designed that modern reconstructionists have made transatlantic crossings. The Oseberg ship was used for burial, was carved with dragons, knotwork, and intricate artistry, because to the Vikings, the ship was not just transportation, it was the chariot of the soul. Even in death, a warrior was carried by sea. So what made the longship so revolutionary? It collapsed distances. Towns days apart by land were now hours apart by sea. It erased predictability. Armies built walls and strategic outposts. Vikings sailed around them. It inverted the power structure. Wealthy coastal cities were suddenly vulnerable to farmers with sails and fury. Most kings feared armies. Viking kings built fleets, and with those fleets, they could attack anywhere, anytime, and they often did. So why don't we remember the ship the same way we remember the sword? Because ships don't bleed. Ships don't roar onto the battlefield. But without the longship, the sword never reached its target. Without the longship, the saga never leaves the fjord. The Viking Age never begins. And yet, the ship was just the beginning, because what the longship carried was far more dangerous than wood or sails. It carried warriors, and worse, it carried intent. You know the image. A Viking with an axe, beard tangled from salt wind, shield scarred, eyes sharp. He's screaming into the storm as he crashes into a line of defenders, swinging steel like he was born to split the world apart. It's powerful, it's iconic, and it's also incomplete. Because long before the axe met flesh, long before the shout left his throat, the battle was already decided, and the longship made the decision. Let's get something straight. The Vikings didn't win because they were stronger. They won because they were smarter, faster, earlier. They didn't knock on the front gates of a kingdom. They slid up the river in silence, climbed the back wall, and left before the gatekeeper could even lift a torch. That's the part of the Viking warfare most people miss. The longship wasn't just a vehicle, it was a weapon of psychological warfare. It turned distance into surprise. It turned coastlines into war zones. It made empires feel fragile because by the time you saw the dragon's head on the horizon, you'd already lost. Vikings didn't wait for a fight. They picked the time, they picked the place, they picked the terms, and they always picked them from the deck of a longship. Let's break it down. Speed wins wars. Viking longships could move faster than any medieval army. At top speed under sail, they could cover 80 to 100 miles a day, twice the range of most mounted knights. And when wind failed, no problem. Oars took over, 50 men, one rhythm, water became roads, rivers became highways. They could strike a monastery at dawn, load the ship with silver, and be gone before midday. No standing army could match that. The second advantage was the range. The reach of the longship was terrifying. Most European armies couldn't project force beyond a few dozen miles. Vikings struck from Greenland to the Black Sea and throughout Spain. They settled Normandy and France, they traded in Baghdad, and they stormed Constantinople. They touched North America 500 years before Columbus. And they did all of it in open-deck ships that hugged the curves of the coast and followed the stars like whispers from Odin himself. The next advantage they had was surprise. Surprise was strategy. There was no greater terror than waking to smoke and steal from a force you didn't know was coming, and the Vikings mastered that terror. Why? Because longships could land almost anywhere. They didn't need harbors. They didn't need deep waters. They could sail up creeks, beach on sand, navigate inland rivers, and bypass fortified cities entirely. The defenders might have had walls, but the Vikings didn't knock. They slipped past the front door and kicked open the cellar. The longships didn't just give access, it eliminated preparation. And number 4, escape was built in. Most medieval armies had one direction, forward. If a raid failed, retreat was chaos. But Vikings, if things went sideways, they could be on the water and out of reach in minutes. Try chasing a longship on horseback. Go ahead. Even if you managed to find the coast before they vanished, you'd find nothing but footprints, ash, and an empty tide. The longship made every Viking a ghost with a blade. And the 5th thing the Vikings had was reputation, and reputation was a weapon. Eventually, they didn't even need to fight. Just the sight of a longship's prow was enough to send villagers running, monks praying, and kings scrambling to pay. Just the sight of a longship's prow was enough to send villagers running, monks praying, and kings scrambling to pay tribute money. Because when the dragon came, silver had to flow. The fear of the ship preceded the ship. And when you make your enemy surrender before the sword is drawn, you've already won. So, what was the real weapon of the Viking Age? Not the axe, not the berserker. It was tactical mobility. It was preemptive dominance. It was the longship, a ship that let you choose your war and leave before it became one. It's easy to admire the Vikings for their brute force, but their genius, what made them legends, was subtle, strategic. They didn't invent war. They reinvented how it arrived. They didn't have better armor. They had better options. They didn't outfight every enemy, they outthought them. Because in the end, the sword may win the duel, but the longship wins the war. The oar moves with your body now. Not like an object, but an extension of your spine, your breath, your purpose. The blisters are raw, but you don't care. Pain is just proof that you're still part of the crew, that you're still alive. Salt stings your face. It cakes your hair. Your knuckles ache from hours of grip. The longship rises and falls like the chest of some sleeping sea beast beneath you. Sometimes it slaps the waves like a thunderclap. Other times it glides across the water like a feather riding a gust of wind. The sky is bruised purple with morning light. Gulls circle ahead, their cries harsh and distant but familiar. You feel a chill in your bones, soaked into your wool and your skin. But there's no fire like the one in your belly, the fire of return, of survival. Behind you, smoke, ash, a raid finish, silver urn, blood spilled. Ahead, the open sea, and beyond it, home. The waves begin to calm as the coastline fades behind you, the rhythm of the ship steadies. You glance to your left and see your shield brothers' silent faces blank with exhaustion or thought. Others chew dried fish or stare forward, fixed on something far beyond the horizon. The helmsman stands like a carved god at the stern, one hand on the great steering oar, his cloak whipping in the wind, his eyes never blink. He knows these waters, like a raven knows the sky. Every rock, every turn of the current. You trust him more than you trust your own heartbeat. There is something sacred about this ship. Not just the way it moves, but the way it listens. As if it knows its role, as if it carries not just men, but fate. You think of the builders, of the pine trees felled in the deep forest, the sap still sweet when the planks were shaped. You think of the iron nails, the tar-stained hands, the callous palms that smoothed its ribs and carved its dragon head prow. You think of every man who died so this ship could live. And here you are inside of it, pulled forward by it. You feel every shift in the water through the hull like nerves through a bone. You feel the creak of tension in its frame, the way it flexes with the sea and never against it. You know that no Roman galley, no Saxon merchant tub could move like this, could strike and vanish like this, could become wind and wave like this. You close your eyes, let the wind batter your cheeks, let your thoughts drift, the creaking wood, the slap of water, the low murmur of men, the occasional curse, the smell of salt, pitch, and blood. This is the sound of coming home. The coastline changes. You recognize the cliffs now, dark stone rising like old teeth from the water. A narrow inlet opens like a mouth and the helmsman nods. The sail is lowered, the oars return to rhythm. You row with a strange energy, worn but driven, the kind of strength that comes from knowing that the end is near. Then, there it is, the docks. Wooden piers stretched out like fingers into the gray sea. A few small fires burn along the shore. People gather. Figures wave from the cliff path. The smell of smoke and fish and cold earth rushes over you like a flood. And just like that, the ship slows. The prow noses gently against the dock, a muffled thud. The sound of ropes, of boots on wet wood, of crew exhaling all at once. You stand, knees stiff, shoulders sore, hands trembling. You step onto the dock, and the ground feels strange, solid, still, unmoving. The opposite of the world you've lived in for the last few days. And yet, it welcomes you. The other are already unloading the silver, the loot, the tools. Laughter begins to return, slaps on the back, nods from those who watched from the shore. But you turn back, just for a moment. You look at the ship, the longship that bore you to the battle, to the fire, and to your destiny. The longship that carried your blood and silver, the longship that bore you to the battle, to the fire, to your fate. The longship that carried your blood and silver and story back again. You feel a swell of reverence, of gratitude, of awe. And it's not just wood and sail. It's not just iron and nails. It's memory, motion, magic. It's a blade with 50 hearts behind it, and you were one of them. Tomorrow, it will rest, but not for long, because the sea is never quiet for long, and neither are Vikings. The ship only moves when everyone rows. Yes, the helmsman steers. Yes, the sails catch the wind. But in the moments that matter most, when storms rise, when tides shift, when wind dies, the oars matter. The people matter. The ship is nothing without the crew. You want to build something lasting? You want to carry your dream to foreign shores? Then learn what the Vikings mastered. Discipline, design, direction. The longship is a perfect metaphor for legacy, for leadership, for life itself. Discipline wins when fury fails. People think that the Vikings were wild, and some were, but the longship didn't run on rage, it ran on rhythm. Each man had to row in time. One offbeat stroke and the whole ship turned. Discipline was survival. And isn't that still true? When life gets choppy, when the wind changes and nothing's working, what keeps moving you? Habit, discipline, the rhythm you trained for. Fury fades, discipline doesn't. We can also learn of design. Design becomes destiny. The longship didn't just happen. Every curve of the calculated, every gap in the planks, lapped, sealed, weathered, tested. Even the dragon head at the prow, it wasn't decoration, it was psychology. It was meant to strike fear into those who saw it before they even saw the men disembark. Look at your life, your business, your family, your faith. Are you designing for strength or improvising your way towards burnout? Because here's the hard truth. If you don't design your ship, the sea will decide your course. The Vikings and their ship had speed, but speed is useless without direction. The longship was fast, unmatched, untouchable, but still needed a course. Speed without aim is just chaos in motion. And how many of us live that way? We sprint, we hustle, we grind, but to where? The Viking captains studied stars, read currents, watched birds. They listened before they launched. They knew where they were going. Do you? Or are you just rowing harder in circles? And the longship didn't vanish with the Vikings. Its spirit lives on, places you wouldn't expect. From warships to startups, from trade routes to teams, today's titans still ride its wake. The last Viking longship was carved over 1,000 years ago, but if you think they vanished, you're not looking close enough. Because the spirit of the longship, the strategy behind its design, the principles beneath its power, it still moves among us. In war, in business, in how we lead and how we win, the longship never left. It just changed shape. The military today echoes this in its fast, flexible, fearless ships. The U.S. Navy calls it literal combat, ships designed for coastal waters, rapid strike, shallow shores. Sound familiar? They didn't reinvent the concept, they just rediscovered what the Vikings knew all along. Speed beats size, flexibility beats firepower, surprise is worth more than armor. Special ops teams today train for the exact kinds of insert and vanish raids the Vikings perfected. They use fast boats, shallow landings, night vision instead of mist, but the tactics, pure longship. In business, we see it in startups. Startups are like longships, not castles. Think about it. Big corporations, like castles. Tall walls, heavy bureaucracy, hard to move. Startups, they're like longships, lean, fast, built by small crews, rowing in rhythm. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They launch into the unknown and adjust on the water. And just like a longship, a startup only survives if the crew trusts each other, rows together, and adapts fast. If they don't, they sink. In any team culture, we can learn a ton from the Vikings. The Viking shield wall worked because each warrior protected the man next to him. The longship worked for the same reason. No lone heroes, no passengers. Everyone rowed, everyone mattered. Modern leaders talk about alignment, collaboration, buy-in. The Vikings had no slideshows. They had oars and a creed, row together or die alone. If your team doesn't feel like a crew, your mission will never reach the shore. We see the Viking influence in globalization. The Vikings didn't just raid, they traded. Glass from the east, silk from Byzantium, Arabic coins in Swedish soil, Norse goods in Constantinople. They laid the first threads of global commerce. Today, the same shipping lanes, Denmark to the English Channel, Russia's rivers to the Black Sea, still carry goods. The Vikings' routes became global roads. Their ships became the first great network. Before Silk Roads, there were salt roads. Before shipping lanes, there were longships. Now, you are the longship. Maybe you're not at war, but you're crossing something, a transition, a launch, a storm, a dream. And the question isn't whether you're strong enough. The question is, have you built your vessel? Do you know where you're headed? Do you have the right crew? Do you move with rhythm? Because the tides of this world don't care how hard you paddle. They care how you steer. You are the longship. What you build, where you go, how you arrive, that's up to you. And here's the lesson. Build your life like a longship. Lean, sharp, purposeful, made for more than surviving, made for reaching. Don't wait for a calm sea. Move with rhythm, choose your crew well, and when the moment comes, arrive like the tide, swift, sure, unstoppable. Because by the time the world sees you coming, it should already be too late. If today's episode stirred something in you, if you felt the oar in your hands, if you saw the mist lift from the shore, if something ancient whispered inside of you, then don't let this be the end. Let this be your launch. Subscribe now to the Viking Legacy and Lore podcast. Share this episode with someone who's ready to move, who's done waiting and ready to set sail. Leave a rating, write a review, not for the algorithm, but for the ones still waiting on shore, wondering if they could chase the horizon too. Because here, in this space, we don't just tell stories, we awaken legends. And your voice, your action, your presence in this crew, it matters. So I'll leave you with this. Be the prow that breaks the silence. Be the rhythm that drives the mission. Be the wake that's remembered long after the ship has passed. And until next time, be bold, be strong, and awaken the Viking in you.